This is a demo for comparing strings in Java. We will start by trying to compare two strings. So if I create string s1 is equal to, and I could assign a string literal to it as, let's say, CS1440, and then repeat that, but this time reference it by s2, and then system.out.println, and then try to say s1 is equal to s2. So here, this is going to give you true, but you need to be very careful about why is it giving you true. It's not because both of them are pointing to CS1440, or both of them are identical contents of being CS1440. The reason is because in the memory, both of them, S1 and S2 in the stack memory, they have the same address stored in them, pointing to the same string literal, which is CS1440. So it's giving true, and maybe when you look at it and say, yeah, that makes sense because CS1440 is equal to CS1440, and that's not the reason. It's because S1 and S2 contain the same string or the same address. To prove that, S3 is equal to new string, and in this case I'm going to say, for example, computer science. All right, and then I'm going to repeat the same, but this time I'm going to say S4, and then I try to compare these two. And you will find that it's false. Right, so this means it's not just about the contents. Here, equal in general, whenever you use it with the strings, and in general in the future you will learn that whenever you use it with objects, it's going to compare memories. And if you compare memories, in that case you will get true or false just based on the memory, not the contents or the object itself. All right, so how to avoid this? How do we compare the contents, right? So Java gives us two methods to do this, and we will use them right now. The first one is that you can use s3 dot equals. So Java provides an equals method which compares objects in general, and in this case, since string is an object, you can use it to compare strings. So now it's telling you it's true. Before equal gives you false. All right, now another thing that you need to notice here is that if you switch, so if I say S4 is equal to S3, it doesn't matter. The only thing that is different here is that you are calling the equals instance method owned by S4 instead of the one that is owned by S3. Does that make sense? So here equals, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to take S4 compared to S3, or take S3 compared to S4. In this context, in this equals method, it's not going to make any difference. All right. Of course, if I add computer science 1, in this case, this is going to turn into false because they are not equal anymore. The contents are completely different. All right. The next method that Java provides to compare numbers, or to compare the string objects, is called the compare_to method. And the compare_to method does not return false or true. It returns numbers. It returns an integer. Okay. So if I try, for example, here, say, let's say here, compare_to, and notice that equals and compare_to are case sensitive. All right. So it matters how you compare like how you type the equals and compare_to. All right. So let's, for example, here try call it 1 and 2. Okay, so in this case here, you will notice that the difference is just 1, which we can imagine in the ASCII table is going to be translated into a single number of difference. So 1 is the difference. Now notice here that we are getting positive 1 because we are comparing S4, which is here, to S3, which is this one. So we are saying, how does that compare to this? Now, if you ask, how does that compare to this? The 2 comes after 1 in the table, and that's why 2 has a higher code or higher ordinal code than 1. And that's why it says the difference is a positive 1. All right. Now, if you switch this to be how does S3 compare to S4, now you're looking at it from the other side, and then you will say S3 is less than S4 by 1. So in this case, it's going to turn that into negative 1. If I make it S1, if I make it, sorry, 1, in this case, they are identical, and in that case, it's going to return 0. So notice it gives you a number, and that number tells you how far they are, right? And that can be useful. That can be useful to organize words in a dictionary, or set some kind of an order of or ranking or sorting of your names. The other thing that I would like to point out is that now, since compare to returns a number, you will need to do an extra effort to make it true or false. So if I want to use compare to in a condition, all right, so here, for example, I could use if, let's say, S3 equals S4, all right, which is true in this case, I would like to print system.out.println, okay, something like this, and I would just say the strings are equal, okay, and that's equal, and then run. It's going to print the strings are equal. Why? Because S3.equals S4 evaluates to true, because they are actually equal strings, and that's why if true means true, and if the if the if condition evaluates to true, then whatever is in there is going to be conditionally executed. All right. Now, this is not the case with equals to or compare to. So fs3 compare to s4, and I would like to print something like this here. There we go. Notice here that it's going to complain. It says incompatible type, int cannot be converted to boolean. F is expecting a boolean, and here s3 compares to s4 is going to return 0, which is an integer. So that's why you need to do an extra step to make it a boolean by comparing, is it equal to 0? All right, so in this case, yes, it is. So it's going to print the strings are equal. So you need to put it in a conditional or relational statement or expression just to make it evaluate to true or false. All right. So as we have seen here, it compares, and like if I add here, for example, 100, right? So here we go. Or no, let's do 9. So it's going to give a difference of 9, right? Or negative 8. 9 and 1, the difference is 8. So here, this 8, notice that what Java does, that C is equal to C, O is equal to O, M is equal to M, and so on. There's no difference until it finds the 1 and 9, they are different. And then it goes to the table and compare their ordinal values. And that's why the negative 8 comes here. All right, so it keeps comparing character by character until it finds the first 2 different characters. Now, it doesn't matter what comes next. Like, for example, here, if I say X and here is C. All right, so it doesn't care about this. This is not going X and C, the difference between them is huge, but it's not going to impact, because once it finds the first 2 different characters, that's it. It sets at that. And that would be the value of the difference between the 2 strings. It ignores whatever comes after this. Done. All right. The other thing that we want to talk about before we conclude this is that if you have a, let's say, I don't care about, so here is cat, and here is cat, all uppercase. All right. If you compare them, okay, so here, system.out.println, and I try to compare s3 dot compare to, right, s4. compile, run. So what do you expect the difference is going to be? C is equal to C, so there's no difference. A is not equal to A because they are lowercase and uppercase. The difference between them in the table is 32 characters, right? So that's why the A is not equal to A here, because one is lowercase, one is uppercase. And the lowercase comes after the uppercase in the table, and that's why it has the 32 in positive. Now, what if you want to ignore that, right? So let's say, for example, you're maintaining a database, and in the database, you're storing all emails with lowercase. And then people are using your application, they are entering their emails, and by accidentally, they hit the caps, right? The caps lock. And then they entered the whole email as uppercase. You could mistakenly say, oh, you are not a member of this application, you don't have credentials, I'm not going to log you in. However, if you want to compare and make sure that you compare for all possible cases, you could just say compare to ignore case. All right. So here, compare to ignore case is going to tell you that the difference between them is 0. So it ignored the fact that this is uppercase, this is lowercase, right? And the same for T. And the same goes with equals. So I could go and say equals ignore case, and ideally, if I say just equals, it should give me false, right? But if I say equals ignore case, it's going to give me true. So here is the proof. Equals false, right? And ignore case is going to ignore the case and say cat is equal to cat no matter what casing you use there. All right, so this is how you use the string comparison, and you need to be very careful because this is a very common mistake. People forget these rules and just go and say equal equal, which gives them the wrong answer.